The resort closed in 1992. So why am I still getting room service calls from floor 7? A floor that doesn't exist anymore. The Desert Palms Resort looked like a monument to broken promises when I first pulled into the parking lot. 16 stories of sun-bleached concrete and shattered Art Deco dreams. Sitting alone on 30 acres of dead scrubland outside El Paso. The kind of place that screamed luxury destination in the brochures and insurance fraud in the headlines. Mr. Brome, the property manager handling the renovation contracts, had been clear during our phone interview. I wouldn't be guarding anything valuable, just maintaining presence, documenting condition reports, and making sure vagrants didn't turn the place into a shooting gallery. The pay was absurdly good for what amounted to sitting in an empty lobby for 8 hours. $700 a week, cash, no questions about my spotty employment history. I've been bouncing between security gigs since my dishonorable discharge, and this seemed like the easiest money I'd see all year. Show up at 10 at night, leave at 6 in the morning, don't steal anything. Simple. Brome met me at the main entrance on my first night, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and the perpetual squint of someone who'd spent too long reading fine print. He handed me a ring of keys that looked like they belonged in a museum, along with a heavy 3-ring binder with a peeling label, Operational Protocol, Desert Palms, Legacy Staff. Most of this is standard stuff, Brome said, his voice carrying that particular tone of someone who didn't quite believe what they were saying. Fire exits, emergency contacts, that sort of thing. The building's in rough shape, so there are some unusual safety procedures you'll need to follow. He gestured vaguely at the darkened lobby behind him. Power's intermittent. Elevators are offline. Stay on the ground floor, unless absolutely necessary. I flipped through the binder while he talked. The pages were yellowed, some clearly photocopied from older documents, others typed on what looked like an ancient word processor. There were floor plans, safety diagrams, and then page after page of numbered rules. Not guidelines. Rules. 28 of them in the main section, with 4 more scrawled in blue pen on the final page. These rules, I said, stopping at one that read, never answer the lobby phone after 2:13 a.m. The caller isn't a guest. This is a joke, right? Some kind of hazing thing for new hires. Brome's expression didn't change. The previous security contractors stopped showing up after the first week. All 3 of them. I'm offering you excellent money to follow a simple list of procedures, Mr. Turner. If you prefer not to take the position, I can find someone else. $700 a week. I thought about the overdue notices stuffed in my glove compartment, the efficiency apartment I'd probably lose next month, the way the VA kept losing my benefits paperwork. No, I'm good. Just seems a little elaborate. The Desert Palms has a complicated history, Brome said. He pulled out an old punch card from his briefcase, the kind with holes punched by mechanical clocks. You'll clock in using the old front desk system. The digital terminals were never properly decommissioned, and they tend to malfunction. He demonstrated on a dusty time clock mounted behind the reception desk, the metallic ka-chunk echoing through the empty space. When your shift ends, clock out the same way. Don't forget, or payroll gets confused. He spent another 20 minutes walking me through the basics. The generator in the basement that kept minimal emergency lighting running. The location of the restrooms that still had working plumbing. The storage room where I could heat up food using a camping stove. Normal things, practical things, delivered in the same flat tone he'd used for the weird rules. Before he left, Brome paused at the main doors, keys jingling in his hand. The resort suffered a significant incident in July 1992. An electrical fire. 27 fatalities. The building's been in legal limbo ever since. We're hoping to finally move forward with redevelopment, but he trailed off, staring at something in the darkened hallway beyond the lobby. Just follow the protocols, Mr. Turner. All of them, even the ones that seemed silly. Then he was gone, and I was alone in 16 stories of abandonment. The first few hours were mind-numbingly boring. I set up my laptop at the front desk, ate my sandwich, scrolled through news sites with the building's barely functioning Wi-Fi. The emergency lights cast everything in sickly yellow, creating shadows that seemed to move when I wasn't looking directly at them. Old hotels always felt like this, I told myself. All that empty space, all those years of people passing through, it left an impression. Nothing supernatural, just psychology and architecture. At 1:47 a.m., the lobby phone rang. I stared at it, remembering the rule. Never answer the lobby phone after 2:13 a.m. It wasn't 2:13 yet. Technically, I could answer, but something about the sound made my skin crawl. It wasn't the normal electronic trill of a modern phone. It was an old-fashioned mechanical bell, harsh and insistent, the kind of sound that belonged in black and white movies. I let it ring 15 times before it stopped. At 2:13 a.m. exactly, it rang again. My hand had actually moved toward the receiver before my brain caught up. I yanked it back like the phone was electrified. The ringing continued for 30 seconds, then stopped with a hollow click that seemed to echo from somewhere deeper in the building. In the silence that followed, I heard something else. Elevator machinery grinding to life. Rule 3. If the elevators are working, take the stairs. The elevators move on their own schedule. The main elevator bank was visible from the front desk. 3 sets of brass doors with Art Deco geometric patterns. The middle set shuttered, decades of rust and neglect audible in every grinding gear. The floor indicator above it flickered to life, numbers lighting up in sequence. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, then 7. I pulled out the building schematics Brome had included in the binder. According to the floor plans, the Desert Palms had 16 stories. The floors were numbered 1 through 6, then 8 through 17. There was no 7th floor. The diagrams showed it clearly. The space where the 7th floor should have been was marked with cross-hatching and a note. Structural collapse. Condemned July 9th, 1992. The elevator dinged. The doors opened onto darkness. Nothing came out. The car just sat there, waiting, interior lights dead, but the call button glowing this soft, inviting amber. I could hear something inside, a faint whisper that might have been air circulation or might have been something else entirely. After 30 seconds, the doors closed. The elevator descended, numbers counting backward until it reached the lobby level again. This time, when the doors opened, the interior was lit. Old-fashioned incandescent bulbs cast warm light on burgundy carpet and wood paneling that looked freshly polished. The inspection certificate in the brass frame read, "Last inspection, July 8th, 1992. I walked closer despite every instinct screaming at me to stay at the desk. Through the open elevator doors, I could see the button panel. All the normal floor numbers were there, worn brass buttons in 2 neat columns. But between 6 and 8, there was one more button, darker than the others, like someone had tried to pry it out and failed. A simple number 7, stamped in a slightly different font than the rest. The elevator doors closed smoothly, and the car ascended again. I watched the indicator climb. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It stopped there. For a full minute. Nothing happened. Then it descended, and when it reached the lobby again, the doors didn't open. I forced myself back to the front desk. My hands were shaking, and I told myself it was low blood sugar, adrenaline, anything except what my gut was screaming, that something was very wrong with this place, wrong in ways that violated basic reality. The guest log sat where Brome had left it, a massive leather-bound book that probably weighed 20 pounds. I opened it to distract myself in the elevator from the impossible 7th floor. The pages were thick parchment, entries written in careful longhand. Hundreds of names, dates, room numbers. The handwriting changed every few pages, different desk clerks recording arrivals over decades. The last entry was dated July 9th, 1992. The page was half filled with names, then nothing. Blank pages after that. Years of them, waiting for guests who would never arrive. I ran my finger down the final entries, reading names at random. Mitchell, room 304. Davidson, room 512. Reeves, room 701. Room 701. The seventh floor room. The rule about it flashed in my mind. Room 701 is sealed. Do not try to open it, even if it knocks back. My phone buzzed in my pocket, making me jump. A text from an unknown number. You're doing well. Remember the protocols. They're there for a reason. I tried to reply, but the message failed. No signal. I hadn't had a signal when I'd been browsing earlier either. Had been using Wi-Fi. So how had I received a text? That's when I heard the first knock. Not on the door. Not on a window. It came from inside the front desk itself. From the cabinet doors beneath the old punch clock. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. The kind someone makes when they want to be let in. Rule 31. If you hear a knock from the inside of the front desk, ignore it. I ignored it. The knocking continued for 5 minutes, patient and rhythmic, before finally stopping. In the silence that followed, I became aware of another sound. Footsteps on the floor above me. Slow, measured steps, like someone pacing in a room directly overhead. According to the floor plan, nothing was directly overhead. The lobby had a 2-story ceiling, with the second floor beginning further back in the building. At 3 a.m., the chandeliers flickered, all of them simultaneously, the emergency generator stuttering. Rule 8. Never let the chandeliers go dark. It keeps them upstairs. I didn't have control of the generator. Couldn't prevent the flicker. The lights steadied after a moment. But in that brief darkness, I'd seen something. A shape at the top of the grand staircase. Watching. When the lights came back, it was gone. I spent the rest of my shift cataloging every creak, every shadow, every impossible sound. The piano music I could hear faintly from the direction of the old ballroom, despite the doors being locked. The smell of chlorine from the pool area, which had been drained years ago. The way the temperature dropped exactly 13 degrees at 4:17 a.m., cold enough that my breath fogged. At 5:47 a.m., I heard the front door handles rattle. Through the glass, I could see a figure in a burgundy uniform standing on the steps. He wore a bellhop's cap and carried an old-fashioned brass luggage cart. His face was in shadow, but I could see his hand reaching for the door, pressing against the glass. He wanted to be let in. I sat frozen at the desk, watching him. He didn't move like someone living. There was something off about his posture, the way his head tilted, like a recording played at the wrong speed. After a minute, he stepped back from the door and simply looked at me, waiting. Rule 12. If you see someone in a bellhop uniform, don't speak. He'll follow you home. The sun came up at 6:03 a.m. The moment the first rays hit the lobby windows, the figure outside was gone. Not walking away, just gone. I clocked out with shaking hands, the punch card emerging with another metallic ka-chunk that sounded too loud in the empty space. I made it to my car, locked the doors, and sat there for 10 minutes before I trusted myself to drive. My phone had signal now. 3 missed calls from Brome, all placed exactly at 2:13 a.m. There was one voicemail, but when I tried to play it, I only got static and what sounded like a woman's voice saying, "We never checked out." I drove home, telling myself I wouldn't go back. $700 a week wasn't worth this. Nothing was worth this. But when I checked my bank account that afternoon, the money was already there. $700, cash deposit, with a memo. Week 1, excellent performance. See you tonight. I hadn't worked a full week. I'd worked 1 shift, and somehow, they already knew I was coming back. The second night, I brought a camera. Not that I expected anyone to believe me if I caught something on film. People don't believe in ghosts until they see one themselves. And even then they'll invent a dozen explanations before accepting the truth. But I needed evidence for myself. Needed to know I wasn't losing my mind. The desert palms had been abandoned for over 30 years. Dead buildings didn't make phone calls or operate elevators. There had to be a rational explanation. That's what I told myself during the drive out, watching the sun sink behind the Franklin Mountains. The resort appeared on the horizon like a tombstone, windows reflecting the dying light. I counted 7 windows illuminated on the upper floors, which was impossible since the power was only running to the ground floor. By the time I pulled into the parking lot, those windows were dark again. Brome's car wasn't there. He'd said he wouldn't be there for my second shift, but I had the procedures now and should be fine on my own. The main doors were unlocked, which bothered me more than it should have. I'd locked them when I left. I was certain of it. The lobby looked different at night. Not physically different, but the atmosphere had changed, like the building had been holding its breath all day and finally exhaled when darkness fell. The emergency lights seemed dimmer, shadows deeper. The old furniture that had looked merely dated in my first night now looked period accurate, like someone had carefully preserved everything exactly as it had been in 1992. I clocked in at 10:02 p.m., the punch card emerging with that same metallic sound. As I pulled it from the machine, I noticed something written on the back in blue ink. "Welcome back, Cal. We're glad you stayed." I hadn't told anyone my first name. Brome had only ever called me Mr. Turner. The first 3 hours passed quietly, but it was a tense quiet, like the building was waiting for something. I set up my laptop and camera at the front desk, angling the camera to capture the elevator bank and the grand staircase. Every few minutes, I'd check the feed, scrubbing backward through the footage to see if I'd missed anything. Nothing. Just empty space and bad lighting. At 1:15 a.m., the security monitors flickered to life. I hadn't even known there were security monitors. Brome hadn't mentioned them, and they hadn't been active during my first shift. But now, mounted on the wall behind the desk, a bank of 6 small screens glowed with black and white footage from cameras throughout the resort. I could see the pool area, the ballroom, the kitchen, a long hallway that might have been the second floor, and 2 screens showing static. As I watched, a figure walked across the pool area camera. The bellhop from my first night, pushing his brass luggage cart. He moved with that same wrong rhythm. Too slow in some moments, too fast in others. The camera tracked him as he crossed the drained pool, approaching the deep end. Then he kept walking, straight down into the empty pool, descending below the camera's view. The cart followed him, wheels rolling smoothly down the vertical wall like gravity had rearranged itself just for him. I switched my attention to the other monitors. The ballroom camera showed empty space, but I could hear piano music now, drifting from that direction. Blue Moon played with the slightly off-tempo quality of a mechanical player piano. The kitchen camera showed nothing unusual, just old equipment and shadows. The hallway camera showed doors, lots of them, all closed, until one opened. Room 304. A woman stepped out, wearing a maid's uniform that looked like it belonged in a period drama. Black dress, white apron, hair pinned up in a severe bun. She pushed a cleaning cart loaded with towels down the hallway, stopping at each door and knocking once before moving on. When she reached the end of the hallway, she turned and looked directly at the camera. Her eyes were dark holes in her face, empty sockets that somehow still conveyed recognition. She mouthed something, and even without sound, I could read her lips. "He's waiting." Then the monitor went to static. My camera alert chimed. Motion detected. I looked at my laptop screen and felt my stomach drop. The camera I'd set up to watch the lobby had caught something. Me, standing at the front desk, and behind me, barely visible in the dim light, the bellhop, standing 3 feet behind my chair, one hand extended like he was about to tap my shoulder. I spun around. Nothing there, just empty space and the old punch clock. But on the camera feed, he remained, watching me. His face was clearer on screen than it had been through the glass doors. Young, maybe mid-20s, with dark hair and a pencil-thin mustache. His eyes were the same empty voids as the maid's. I grabbed the binder and flipped through it, looking for staff photos. It took me 15 minutes to find them, tucked in a plastic sleeve at the back. Black and white ID photos from 1992. Rows of employees who had worked the final shifts. There, third row, second from the left. The same face. The caption beneath read, Emmett Ray, bellhop. Deceased July 9th, 1992. Age 24. My phone buzzed. The same unknown number from last night. He was the first to die. The flames started in the staff elevator. I typed back, "Who is this?" 3 dots appeared, indicating someone was typing. Then, "We're all here, Cal." We never left. The lobby phone rang. 2:13 a.m. exactly. I've been so focused on the monitors and messages that I lost track of time. The old mechanical bell shrilled through the empty space, insistent. Rule 3 said don't answer. But the text messages, the camera feed, the way the building seemed to know my name, I needed answers more than I needed safety. I picked up the phone. Desert Palms Resort. How may I direct your call? The words came automatically, muscle memory from a dozen other security jobs. Static, then a woman's voice. Distant, like she was calling from very far away. Room service, please. This is room 701. I'm sorry, but room service was discontinued. Don't give me corporate lines, honey. We've been waiting since July. It's been long enough. The voice shifted, becoming clearer, closer. Tell Emmett we need towels. Fresh ones. And tell him to bring the manager. We'll have to check out now. There's no one here, I said. The resort is closed. Then why did you answer the phone? The line went dead. The elevator machinery activated immediately. That grinding sound of old gears struggling to function. All 3 elevator banks this time, moving in sequence. The floor indicators lit up, all of them climbing to 7 and stopping. The security monitors began switching views randomly. Flash of the pool, now filled with dark water despite being drained. Flash of the ballroom. Figures informal, were dancing to the piano music. Flash of the kitchen, the old stove burning with blue flames. Flash of a second-floor hallway. Every door standing open now. Darkness beyond each threshold. Flash of something else. Something that made me turn away before my brain could fully process what I'd seen. When I looked back, all 6 monitors showed the same image. Room 701. The door was different from the others. Reinforced metal with heavy welding marks where someone had sealed it. But the camera view was from inside the room, showing the door from within. And on this side, carved into the metal, were words. The resort never closes. The piano music stopped. In the silence, I heard footsteps on the stairs. Multiple sets, descending in unison. I grabbed my camera, pointed it at the staircase. Through the lens, I could see them. Figures in 1990s business attire. Families in vacation clothes. Staff in their uniforms. All descending the grand staircase. All with those empty eyes. They reached the lobby and spread out. Taking positions like this was their job, their routine. The bellhop appeared beside the front desk without walking there, simply materializing. Up close, I could see the burn marks on his uniform, the way his skin looked waxy and raw. "You're early," I said, my voice cracking. "My shift isn't over until 6. He smiled, revealing teeth that were too white, too perfect. "The shift never ends, sir. Once you clock in, you're part of the family." He gestured to the walls around us. "The Desert Palms takes care of its own. We died here, but we didn't leave. The resort needed us. It still needs us." The fire started in the elevator shaft at 2:13 a.m., July 9th, 1992. He recited, like he'd said it 1,000 times. Faulty wiring. The flames spread through the ventilation system within 6 minutes. 27 guests and staff trapped on the upper floors. The smoke got most of them before the flames did. Quick deaths. Merciful. His smile widened. But the resort didn't die. Buildings like this, places where so much life happened, they develop a kind of consciousness. All that energy, all those memories, They sink into the walls like water in a stone. And when we died, the resort kept us, preserved us. We maintain it, and it maintains us. I stood slowly, trying to keep the desk between us. What do you want from me? The same thing it wants from all the night security. The same thing it wanted from the three before you. He pulled out a brass key from his pocket, tarnished and old. The resort needs to be occupied. Empty buildings decay. But as long as someone keeps showing up, keeps following the rules, keeps the lights on, we persist. And eventually, everyone who works here long enough becomes part of the family. He placed a key on the desk. The tag read, 701. She's been waiting for you specifically, Cal. The manager. She saw your photograph in a hiring file, and she knew you'd be perfect. Strong enough to last. Broken enough to stay. He pointed to the punch clock. You ever wonder why Brome uses that old system? It's not tracking your time. It's claiming you. Every time you clock in, you're giving the resort a piece of yourself. By the end of the month, you'll be more here than anywhere else. The figures behind him nodded in agreement. A child in a swimsuit. A businessman in an ash-stained suit. The maid from a security footage, cleaning supplies still in hand. All of them watching me with those hollow eyes. What happens if I don't come back? I asked. Emmett's expression didn't change. Then we come to you. Rule 12, remember? If you see someone in a bellhop uniform, don't speak. He'll follow you home. He paused. You spoke to me through the phone. That counts. At 5:47 a.m., they simply vanished. One moment the lobby was crowded with the dead. The next I was alone with the emergency lights and the smell of old smoke. The key remained on the desk. I could see wet footprints leading from it, across the lobby floor to the elevator. Pools of water marked each step, though the footprints themselves weren't clear enough to identify. They led right up to the middle elevator door, then through it, as if whoever made them hadn't bothered with the mechanics of opening the door first. I followed the trail of water. Each footprint was cold when I passed my hand over it. The temperature dropping like heat was being actively drained from the air. At the elevator, the trail went vertical, footprints climbing the metal doors like someone had walked up them. They ended at the floor indicator, where a single drop of water clung to the number 7. I clocked out at 6 a.m. exactly. As the punch card emerged, I noticed the date stamped on it, July 9th, 1992. My hands were shaking too badly to hold it. The card fluttered to the floor, and when I bent to pick it up, the date had changed. November 10th, 2025. My car was the only one in the parking lot when I left. But in the rearview mirror, I could see the top floor of the resort. 7 windows were lit now, glowing warm and inviting in the pre-dawn darkness. As I watched, a figure appeared in one window. The maid, cleaning the glass from the inside. She saw me looking and waved, the gesture somehow both friendly and threatening. I drove home and didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw empty eye sockets and felt the weight of a brass key that I'd left on the front desk, but could somehow feel in my pocket. That evening, I told myself I wouldn't go back. I'd call Brome, quit over the phone, tell him to mail my final check. But when 6 o'clock came and went, I found myself getting dressed for work. When 8 o'clock arrived, I was already driving. By 9:30, I was pulling into the parking lot. The truth was simple and horrible. Some part of me wanted to go back. The Desert Palms was wrong, haunted, dangerous. But it was also the most interesting thing that had happened to me in years. After 2 tours in Iraq, after the drinking and the discharge and the long slide into mediocrity, the resort made me feel something other than numb, even if that something was terror. I clocked in at 10 p.m. precisely. The punch card emerged with my name stamped on it, and below that, shift 3 of 30. 30 shifts until what? I was afraid I already knew the answer. The brass key to room 701 sat exactly where I'd left it on the desk. Next to it, a handwritten note on Desert Palm stationery. Management requests your presence. Tonight, 3rd floor accessible via elevator 2. The manager will see you now. I looked at the security monitors. All 6 screens showed the same image: an elevator interior, doors open, waiting. The number 7 glowed above the threshold. My shift had barely begun, and already I knew tonight would be different. Tonight, I would learn exactly what waited on the floor that shouldn't exist. Tonight, I would meet the manager. The elevator had been calling to me all night. Not literally, though at this point I wouldn't have been surprised. No, it was more subtle than that. Every time I tried to focus on my laptop, I feel my eyes drifting to the middle elevator bank. Every time I checked the security monitors, they'd briefly flash to that waiting car, doors open, interior lights burning steady. The brass key to room 701 sat on the desk like a lodestone, pulling my attention whether I wanted to look at it or not. At 1:47 a.m., I stopped pretending I had a choice. I picked up the key. It was heavier than it should have been, warm against my palm like something living. The moment my fingers closed around it, the elevator dinged. A polite, welcoming sound that made my skin crawl. I walked across the lobby, my footsteps echoing off marble floors that had been dusty last night, but now looked freshly polished. The whole building felt different tonight. More present, more aware. The middle elevator stood open, waiting. The interior looked exactly like it had in 1992, all burgundy carpet and brass fixtures, and that particular Art Deco elegance that had defined luxury hotels in the mid-century. The smell hit me as I stepped inside. Lemon polish, cigarette smoke, and underneath it all, something burnt. The inspection certificate in its brass frame read, "Last inspection, July 8th, 1992. Next inspection due, July 10th, 1992. The next inspection that never happened because everyone was dead." I pressed the button for floor 7. Nothing happened for a long moment. Then the doors closed with a smooth hydraulic hiss, and the car began to rise. The floor indicator above the doors lit up in sequence. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then instead of jumping to 8, it continued. 7. The elevator shuddered as it passed into that impossible space, and I felt the change in my teeth, in my bones. Like pressure equalizing, but wrong. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in an instant, cold enough that my breath fogged. The lights flickered, and in that strobe effect, I saw shadows of other passengers standing in the car with me. Burned faces, empty eyes. One of them, a man in a business suit, turned to me and said, "First time?" Then the lights steadied, and I was alone. The elevator dinged. The doors opened. The 7th floor was pristine. Not abandoned building pristine. Not frozen in time pristine. Actually pristine. Like housekeeping had just finished their rounds. The carpet runner down the hallway was deep burgundy, clean enough to show vacuum marks. Wall sconces cast warm light that made brass fixtures gleam. Framed artwork hung at perfect intervals. Southwest landscapes in the style popular in the early 90s. The air smelled like lavender air freshener and furniture polish. Music drifted from somewhere down the hall. Blue Moon played on what sounded like a live piano rather than a recording. I could hear other sounds too. Water running in a room nearby. A television playing what sounded like a news broadcast. The announcer's voice too muffled to make out words. People talking behind closed doors. Conversations reduced to rising and falling tones. The elevator doors started to close behind me. I lunged forward, barely making it into the hallway before they shut. The panic was instinctive and probably stupid. I was already on the floor that didn't exist. Being trapped on it couldn't make things worse. Could it? I walked slowly down the hallway, reading room numbers. 701 through 720, 10 rooms on each side. Most of the doors were closed, dim light visible in the gap beneath some of them. As I passed room 703, I heard water running and someone humming. Room 707 had a television on, canned laughter from a sitcom filtering through the door. Room 712's door was cracked open slightly, and through the gap I could see someone moving around inside. Packing, maybe. getting ready to check out. All of these people had been dead for 33 years. At the end of the hallway, a maid stood with her cleaning cart. The same woman from the security footage, severe bun and hollow eyes. She was folding towels with mechanical precision, each fold exactly the same as the last. When she saw me, she smiled, and the expression looked practiced, like something she'd done 10,000 times and stopped meaning centuries ago. "Good evening, sir. Are you a guest?" Her voice had a distant quality, like I was hearing it through water. "I'm the security guard, Cal Turner." "Of course. I apologize for not recognizing you immediately." She gestured down the hallway behind her. "The manager is expecting you in room 701. I was told to tell you that she's been very patient, but patience has limits." I looked past her. Room 701 was at the far end of this second hallway, perpendicular to the one I'd come from. The door was different from the others. Larger, reinforced, and completely unsealed, despite Brome's assurance that it was welded shut. The brass number plate gleamed in the light. Below it, a placard read, "Presidential Suite." "What happens if I don't go?" I asked. The maid's smile widened, revealing too many teeth. "Then you stay in the hallway. Forever. Waiting for a meeting that never happens while the resort continues its work around you." I've seen it before. The last security guard, Mr. Patterson, refused to enter. "He's still here, actually. Would you like to meet him?" She gestured to a door marked Utility. Through the small window, I could see a man sitting on the floor, knees pulled to his chest. He was rocking slowly, lips moving in what might have been prayer or might have been counting. His security uniform was identical to mine. When he saw me looking, he pressed his face against the window and mouthed a single word, "Run." I walked toward room 701. The hallway stretched as I moved, distances becoming elastic and wrong. Each step should have brought me closer, but the door seemed to recede at the same pace I approached. The maid watched me struggle, her expression never changing. After what felt like 10 minutes of walking, I stopped and closed my eyes. When I opened them again, I was standing directly in front of the door. The brass handle was ice cold under my palm. Inside, I could hear voices. A conversation happening in low tones, punctuated by the clink of silverware against china. Someone laughed, the sound cultured and refined. Classical music played softly in the background, strings and piano weaving together in a melody I didn't recognize. I used a brass key. The lock turned smoothly, well-oiled despite decades of disuse. The door swung open on silent hinges. The presidential suite was enormous, easily the size of a small house. I entered into a living area with floor-to-ceiling windows that should have shown the El Paso desert, but instead displayed a view of the resort's grounds as they'd looked in 1992. Manicured lawns, working fountains, palm trees swaying in a breeze I couldn't feel. The swimming pool was filled with crystalline water, and I could see people swimming, lounging, living. The furniture was high-end 80s meets 90s aesthetic. Leather couches in burgundy and cream. A wet bar with crystal decanters full of amber liquid. Brass fixtures everywhere, catching light from a chandelier that hung from the vaulted ceiling. Everything was perfect. Museum-quality preservation of a very specific moment in time. The voices came from the dining area. I walked through an archway and stopped dead. 27 people sat around an enormous banquet table. They were dressed in the clothes they died in. Business suits and casual resort wear, pajamas and cocktail dresses. Some showed obvious signs of the fire, skin blackened and cracked, hair singed away. Others looked almost normal until you noticed their eyes, vacant and staring. They were all positioned as if in the middle of a dinner party, wine glasses raised, plates full of food that looked simultaneously fresh and decades old. At the head of the table sat a woman in her 50s wearing an immaculate business suit. Her hair was styled in the architectural ways popular in the early 90s, held in place with enough hairspray to survive a hurricane. She wore pearl earrings and a gold name tag that read, Patricia Volker, general manager. Unlike the others, she showed no signs of fire damage. She looked alive, but when she turned to face me, her eyes had the same hollow quality as all the others. Mr. Turner. Finally, her voice was smooth, professional, the kind developed from years of managing difficult guests. Please sit. We have so much to discuss. I'll stand. Suit yourself. She gestured to the frozen guests around her. You're wondering about them. Our permanent residents. They died in the fire, yes, but the resort wasn't ready to let them go. So much energy, so much life force, all released at once. It soaked into the building's bones like blood into fabric. And I had already been part of the resort for 15 years when the fire happened. My essence was so intertwined with this place that when the smoke took me, I simply transitioned from manager to management. She stood, walking around the table with the practiced grace of someone who'd conducted 1,000 tours. Her fingers trailed along the backs of chairs, and I noticed frost formed where she touched. The Desert Palms is special, Mr. Turner. Not just any building can achieve consciousness. It requires the right combination of factors. Years of human habitation, emotional resonance. Tragedy helps, provides the catalyst. And then it needs maintenance. It needs someone to keep the lights on, literally and figuratively. That's where you come in. You want me to be your janitor for a haunted hotel. I want you to be our anchor. She moved closer, and the temperature dropped further. The resort exists in a state of temporal flux. We're frozen in July 1992, but we need connection to the present to maintain stability. Without someone living checking in regularly, we fade. The building decays. Our consciousness weakens. But with an anchor, someone who crosses the threshold every night, who performs the rituals, who maintains the connection, we thrive. I thought about the punch clock, the archaic system Brome insisted I use. The time cards. They're not tracking hours. They're creating quantum entanglement between you and the resort. Every time you clock in, you're synchronizing with our timeline. By the time you've completed 30 shifts, you'll exist more here than in your original timeline. The transition will be painless. You'll simply stop leaving one morning, and you'll join us permanently. And if I stop coming, Patricia's smile was sharp as broken glass. Then we'll have no choice but to expand our reach. Emmett will visit you. The maid will clean your apartment. The guests will check into whatever building you're staying in. We've done it before. The last security guard who quit found us in his bedroom 3 days later. Now he's in the utility closet on this floor, learning that resistance only prolongs the inevitable. I looked at the frozen guests, their trapped faces locked in expressions ranging from confusion to terror. Why me specifically? Because you're already halfway gone, Cal. We read your file. Dishonorable discharge for drinking on duty. No family. No friends who'd notice if you disappeared. You live in an efficiency apartment and work jobs that require no references. You're disconnected, unmoored, barely present in your own life. We're offering you something better. Purpose. Community. A place where you'll never be alone again. It was the truth of it that hit hardest. She was right. I had been disappearing long before I found the Desert Palms. The resort wasn't stealing my life. It was offering to give me one, even if that life was frozen in a moment of tragedy. What about Brome? I asked. He's not dead. Mr. Brome is our recruiter. He exists in both timelines, a human anchor we cultivated years ago. He finds suitable candidates, handles the paperwork, ensures the legal fiction of renovation work continues. In exchange, we allow him to leave. Unlike you, he was smart enough to negotiate before accepting the position. Patricia returned to her seat at the head of the table. The frozen guests remained motionless, but I could feel their attention on me. Waiting, the chandelier above the table began to sway slightly, though there was no breeze. You have a choice, Cal. Continue your shifts, accept the inevitable, and transition peacefully into your role here. Or fight, and we'll make the process considerably less pleasant. Either way, you'll join us. The resort has claimed you. The only question is whether you walk into your new existence or get dragged. I looked around the presidential suite at the perfect preservation of a dead era, at the people trapped in their final moments. Through the windows, I could see more of the resort's grounds in their 1992 glory. Happy vacationers who didn't know they were corpses playing out their last hours on infinite repeat. Then I noticed something else. On the wall behind Patricia, a clock showed the date and time. July 9th, 1992, 2:13 a.m. The exact moment the fire started. And below the clock, a framed photograph. A group photo of the resort staff, taken on what looked like the main stairs. In the back row, partially hidden behind other employees, was a face I recognized. Mine. I was in a photograph taken 33 years before I was born. You see it now, Patricia said, following my gaze. You've always been part of the resort, Cal. This isn't a recruitment. It's a homecoming. You're not becoming something new. You're remembering what you've always been. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out with shaking hands. A text from my own number, get out. Now, while you still remember who you are. The lights flickered. The frozen guests' heads turned in unison, all looking at me. Their mouths opened, and in perfect synchronization, they whispered, "Stay." The presidential suite door slammed shut behind me. The windows that had shown sunny 1992 now displayed the present, the desert dark and barren. And in that darkness, I could see shapes moving, more guests arriving. The resort was growing, expanding, hungry. I ran for the door. Patricia didn't try to stop me. She just laughed, the sound echoing off crystal and brass. You can leave the room, Cal. You can even leave the floor. But you can't leave the resort. Not anymore. You'll be back tomorrow night, and the night after, and the night after that. 30 shifts. Then forever. I wrenched the door open and stumbled into the hallway. The maid was gone. The doors to all the rooms stood open now, and I could see inside each one. Tableaus of death, preserved and repeated. A family suffocated in their sleep. A businessman trying to break a window. A couple holding each other as the smoke took them. Every room a shrine to those final moments. The elevator at the end of the hall dinged. The doors opened. Emmett stood inside, his bellhop uniform crisp and perfect despite the burn marks. "Ground floor, sir." I got in because I had no choice. As the doors closed, I saw the utility closet door crack open. Patterson, the previous security guard, stared at me with eyes that had seen too much. He mouthed one more word before the doors cut off my view. "Sorry." The descent felt like falling. The elevator shuddered and groaned, and through the walls I could hear voices. Screaming, crying, the sounds of the fire, playing on loop forever. The floor indicator counted down. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The doors opened to the lobby. Everything looked normal. The punch clock, the front desk, my laptop still sitting where I'd left it. But I could feel the difference. The building was awake now, fully conscious, and it was hungry. I checked my phone. 3:47 a.m. I'd been on the 7th floor for 2 hours, though it had felt like 20 minutes. I had over 2 hours left on my shift. The security monitors all showed the same image now. Me, sitting at the front desk. But in each monitor, I looked slightly different. Older in some, wearing different clothes. In one, I was wearing a bellhop uniform. In another, I was translucent, fading. They were showing me my possible futures. All of them ended the same way. I lasted until 6 a.m., then clocked out with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. The punch card read, "Shift 3 of 30. Well done. The manager is very pleased." I drove home in silence, unable to turn on the radio because I was afraid of what I might hear. In my rearview mirror, the desert palms grew smaller, but never disappeared entirely. Even when I was miles away, I could still see it on the horizon, a dark monument against the dawn sky. At home, I found wet footprints leading from my door to my bed. They smelled like chlorine and smoke. On my pillow, someone had left a fresh towel, perfectly folded, with the Desert Palms logo embroidered in gold thread. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that photograph. My face in 1992. How was that possible? Had I already been claimed before I was born? Was I a ghost who didn't know he was dead? That night, I tried not to go back. I lasted until 8 p.m. before the pull became unbearable. It wasn't just psychological. It was physical. My chest hurt. My hands trembled. I felt like I was being pulled toward the resort by invisible strings. I clocked in at 10 p.m. Shift 4 of 30. The brass key sat on the desk, waiting. Next to it, a new note. The manager requests your presence in room 701 tomorrow night. There's something she needs to show you. Something about your past. Or is it your future? In the resort, it's hard to tell the difference. I had 26 shifts left before I belonged to them completely. I was starting to wonder if I'd ever really belonged to anything else. The 27th shift arrived faster than I thought possible. I tried everything to break the pattern. Called in sick to Brome and received a text back. The resort doesn't accept medical excuses. See you tonight. Drove to the airport planning to leave Texas entirely, but found myself turning around at the security checkpoint, pulled back by that invisible tether. Even tried getting blackout drunk, but I woke up at 9:45 p.m. completely sober, my uniform laid out on my bed, car keys in my hand. The resort owned me now. I knew it. Patricia knew it. The only question remaining was what would happen when the final transformation occurred. I'd changed over the past weeks. My reflection showed it. I looked paler, translucent in certain lights. My body temperature had dropped 3 degrees. Food tasted like ash. And worst of all, I'd started remembering things that hadn't happened to me. Working the front desk in 1987. Checking in a family who I knew would die in 5 years. Watching the fire start. Feeling the smoke fill my lungs. And then not dying. Just continuing. Always continuing. The other guards had experienced the same thing. I learned. The resort didn't just claim you. It rewrote you. Made you believe you'd always been part of its story. Patterson had lasted 18 shifts before he broke and tried to burn the building down. The matches wouldn't light. The gasoline evaporated before touching the ground. You can't destroy something that exists outside normal causality. I clocked in at 10 p.m. on what I knew would be my final night as something recognizably human. The punch card read, Shift 27 of 30. Final preparations begin tonight. The brass key glowed on the desk, actually glowed, pulsing with a soft amber light that had nothing to do with emergency lighting. Next to it, a formal invitation on cream-colored cardstock embossed with the Desert Palms logo. Mr. Calvin Turner, you are cordially invited to room 701. Presidential Suite, 10:30 p.m. Formal attire requested. The manager will be presenting your orientation materials. I looked down at my security uniform and laughed. The sound echoed wrong in the empty lobby, bouncing back with a quality that made it seem like dozens of people were laughing with me. When I stopped, the echo continued for 3 seconds longer. At 10:30 p.m. exactly, the elevator dinged. All 3 cars opened simultaneously. The middle one showed the normal interior. The left one opened to what looked like the fire, flames licking at the walls, smoke billowing out. The right one opened to complete darkness, the kind that suggested depth, like looking into a well that had no bottom. I stepped into the middle elevator. The doors closed, and Emmett appeared beside me, materializing from nothing. His uniform was pristine tonight. No burn marks, no signs of death. He smiled at me with genuine warmth. Tonight's special, Cal. The manager doesn't do full orientations often. Most anchors just fade in gradually. But you're different. You're important. You were always supposed to be here. He pressed the button for floor 7. Did you ever wonder why Brome found you so easily? Why the job listing appeared on your screen the exact day your savings account hit 0? I hadn't, but now that he mentioned it, the timing had been impossibly convenient. The resort reaches out. Emmett continued as we ascended. It finds people who are compatible, people who are already halfway to wherever we are. You fit perfectly, Cal. You always did. The elevator opened to the 7th floor, but it had transformed since my last visit. The hallway was decorated for a party. Streamers in burgundy and gold hung from the ceiling. Balloons clustered in corners. Soft music played from hidden speakers, and every door stood wide open, guests mingling in the hallway. Chatting and laughing like this was the social event of the season. They all turned to look at me when I stepped out. Applause rippled through the crowd. A woman in a burned evening gown offered me a glass of champagne. A man missing half his face clapped me on the shoulder and said, "Welcome home, brother." I walked through them in a daze. They parted like water, creating a path straight to room 701. The presidential suite's doors stood open, light and music and conversation spilling out. I could smell food now, real food, not the phantom scents I've been experiencing. Roasted meat and fresh bread, and something sweet that made my mouth water despite everything. The suite had been transformed into a proper banquet hall. The table that had held frozen corpses now gleamed with white linens, fine china, and silver serving platters piled with food. The 27 permanent residents sat in their usual positions, but they were animated now, eating and drinking and talking. They looked almost alive in the candlelight, the burn marks and death wounds hidden by shadows and wishful thinking. Patricia stood at the head of the table, resplendent in a different suit, this one clearly expensive designer work from the early 90s. She smiled when she saw me, and this time the expression reached her hollow eyes. "Cal, perfect timing. We're just about to begin the main course." She gestured to an empty chair at the opposite end of the table from her. "Your seat, the anchor's position. From here, you'll observe everything, learn everything, become everything." I sat because my legs wouldn't hold me anymore. The moment I touched the chair, I felt it, a connection forming, like roots growing from my body into the floor. The resort was claiming me physically now, not just mentally. I could feel its consciousness pressing against mine, patient and hungry and eternal. A man to my right, his skin waxy and yellow from smoke inhalation, leaned over. First time's always weird. Give it a minute. The sensation becomes pleasant once you stop fighting. "What happens after 30 shifts?" I asked. "You complete the binding," Patricia answered from her end of the table. A servant appeared, one of the maids, and placed a covered silver platter in front of me. The ritual has phases. First, the recruitment, then the acclimation, then the claiming, and finally, the binding. Once you're bound, you can move freely between timelines. You'll be able to exist in 1992 and 2025 simultaneously. An anchor in the truest sense. She nodded to the maid, who lifted the silver cover. On the plate beneath was a photograph. The same staff photo I'd seen before, the one with my face in the back row. But now I could see the date stamped in the corner. July 8th, 1992. "Your previous iteration," Patricia explained. "You've been here before, Cal. Many times. The resort cycles through anchors, but certain souls are compatible enough that they return. You served as our anchor in 1974, 1983, 1991, and now 2025. Each time, you think it's your first. Each time, you resist. Each time, you accept. And each time, you become part of us until the cycle ends and you're released to be reborn." I stared at the photograph. The face was mine, but younger, wearing clothes I'd never owned. That's impossible. I wasn't born until 1995. Linear time is a human construct. The resort exists orthogonally to normal causality. You weren't born in 1995. That version of you was. But the you that exists here, the essential you, has been cycling through the resort for decades. We don't recruit randomly, Cal. We reclaim. The other guests were eating now. Silverware, clinking against china. The food on their plates looked real, smelled real, but when I looked closely, I could see it never diminished. They cut and chewed and swallowed, but the portions remained the same. An eternal meal that never satisfied and never ended. I want to show you something, Patricia said. She stood, and immediately the room's atmosphere changed. The music stopped. The guests froze mid-motion. Only Patricia and I could still move. Come with me. She led me through a door I hadn't noticed before, one that opened from the living area. Beyond it was a hallway that shouldn't exist, extending far beyond the building's actual dimensions. Doors lined both sides, hundreds of them, each labeled with a date. The resort's memory, Patricia explained. Every significant moment, preserved. Every guest, every employee, every event. It's all here. She opened a door marked July 9th, 1992, 2:13 a.m. Inside was the fire, not a memory or a recording. The actual fire, happening in real time, eternal present tense. I could feel the heat, smell the smoke. Guests ran through hallways, screaming. Staff tried to fight the flames. I saw Emmett trapped in an elevator shaft, flames climbing toward him. Saw the maid suffocating in a linen closet. Saw Patricia herself, stumbling through smoke, calling for help that never came. We died, Patricia said calmly, watching her own death play out. All of us. But the resort had become so saturated with life energy over the decades that it couldn't let go. So it created this, a pocket dimension where we continue, not alive, not exactly dead, sustained by the building itself. She closed that door and opened another. November 10th, 2025, 3:47 a.m. I saw myself sitting at the front desk in the lobby. But I wasn't alone. Shadows moved around me, dozens of them, reaching out to touch me. Each touch left a mark, a dark stain that spread like ink through water. I watched myself become more shadow than man, watched my face change, watched myself forget who I'd been. That's your future if you complete the 30 shifts, Patricia said. Full integration. You'll become part of the resort's consciousness, another ghost in the machine. You'll help us recruit the next anchor, and the next, and the next. Forever. Or, I asked because there had to be an or. There always was in these situations. Patricia smiled sadly. Or you can do what I'm about to offer. Break the cycle. But it will cost you everything. She opened a third door. This one was marked July 8th, 1992, 11:47 p.m. Inside, I saw the resort before the fire. Beautiful, bustling, alive with real living people who had futures. I saw Patricia in her office, young and vital, reviewing contracts. I saw Emmett helping guests with luggage. I saw the maid efficiently cleaning rooms. Everyone was human. Everyone was whole. There's a way to undo this, Patricia said quietly. The fire was started by faulty wiring in the elevator shaft. But the wiring wasn't actually faulty. Someone tampered with it. Someone who wanted the resort destroyed for insurance money. If you can go back to this moment and stop the tampering, the fire never happens. We never die. The resort never becomes conscious. That's time travel. That's impossible. You're standing in a room that watches events from 33 years ago. You've clocked in using a punch card that exists in 1992 and 2025 simultaneously. You've talked to the dead and seen a floor that was demolished. Impossible is relative, Cal. She pulled out a pocket watch, old brass, ticking steady. This belongs to the resort. It's not just a timepiece. It's an anchor point, a physical object that exists in all our timelines simultaneously. If you take it back to July 8th, 1992, and stop the sabotage, you'll collapse this entire pocket dimension. Everyone here will get the deaths they were supposed to have. Quick, clean, final, and you'll be released from the cycle. Why? I asked. Why would you want to end this? You've been the manager for decades. This is your kingdom. Patricia's expression crumbled, revealing the exhaustion underneath. Because I'm tired, Cal. We're all tired. Existing like this, frozen in our death moment, feeding on the living to sustain ourselves. It's not life. It's not even death. It's purgatory. We want to end. We deserve to end. But we can't do it ourselves. The resort won't let us. It needs an anchor, someone with a foot in both worlds, to make the change. She pressed the pocket watch into my hand. It was ice cold and burning hot simultaneously, impossible to hold, but impossible to drop. You have 3 shifts left, she said. On shift 30, the binding completes, and you'll lose the ability to break free. But if you use the watch before then, if you go back and change history, you'll destroy this place. Destroy us. Free us. The choice is yours. I looked at the watch, at the door showing 1992, at Patricia's exhausted face. What happens to me if I do this? If I change history? You'll never have taken this job. The version of you walking around in 2025 will continue his life, unaware any of this happened. But the you standing here, the you that's been cycling through the resort for decades, will finally be released. You'll get to die properly, Cal. To rest. Isn't that what you've wanted since Iraq? Real rest. She was right. I've been running from death for years. But what I'd really been running from was the exhaustion of continuing. The resort had promised eternal purpose, but Patricia was offering something better. An ending. How do I use it? I asked. Hold the watch. Think of the date and time. July 8th, 1992, 11:47 p.m. Step through any door in this hallway, and you'll emerge then. You'll have 1 hour to find the saboteur and stop him. If you succeed, this timeline collapses. If you fail, she smiled grimly, you'll be trapped there. Another ghost in 1992, watching the fire happen from a different angle. I looked down the infinite hallway of doors. So many moments, so many chances to change things. Why didn't you do this yourself? Because I'm already dead, Cal. I'm part of the resort's consciousness. I can't change it from inside. But you're not dead yet. You're still transforming. You have agency, free will, choice. Use it while you still can. The pocket watch ticked in my hand. Each tick felt like a heartbeat, steady and patient. The resort's heartbeat, or mine, or both. I could feel the building's attention on me now, aware of what Patricia had offered. It was angry. The lights flickered. The temperature dropped. From somewhere far away, I heard Emmett calling my name, concerned. Decide quickly, Patricia urged. The resort knows what I've done. It's trying to lock us down, prevent you from leaving. If it succeeds, you'll be bound regardless of the shift count. The hallway doors began slamming shut, one after another, dominoes falling. The date labels blurred as the resort tried to erase access to its own history. But one door remained open, glowing brighter than the others. July 8th, 1992, 11:47 p.m. I ran for it. Behind me, I heard Patricia shout, "Don't forget, the electrical room in the basement. The saboteur will be there at 12:30 a.m. Stop him, and we all go free." Then I was through the door, falling through time and space and memory. The pocket watch clutched tight in my hand, its ticking the only constant as reality dissolved and reformed around me. I landed hard on concrete, the breath knocked from my lungs. When I looked up, I was in a basement hallway. Clean, well lit. Maintenance equipment hummed nearby, and from somewhere above, I could hear music, laughter, the sounds of a hotel fully alive and operational. A clock on the wall showed the date, July 8th, 1992. Time, 11:53 p.m. I had 37 minutes to save 27 lives and destroy the only home I'd ever really known. The Desert Palms in 1992 was beautiful. I'd only seen it as a corpse, abandoned and decaying, haunted by what had been. But walking through the basement that night, I saw it alive. Pipes carried water without rust. Electrical panels hummed with steady power. The concrete floors were clean, marked with fresh paint for safety zones and equipment areas. Somewhere above, guests were sleeping peacefully, employees were completing their shifts, and nobody knew that in 3 hours, most of them would be dead, unless I stopped it. I checked the pocket watch. The second hand moved backward, 11:54 p.m., but counting down rather than up. A timer showing how long I had before the timeline solidified and my chance disappeared. The watch grew warmer in my pocket, pulsing like a living thing. The basement was a maze. Color-coded pipes ran along the ceiling, signs pointing to different mechanical systems. Boiler room, water treatment, laundry, and there, at the far end of a long corridor, electrical room, authorized personnel only. I ran, my footsteps echoing off concrete walls. The basement felt wrong, and it took me a moment to realize why. It was too quiet. No whispers. No phantom sounds. No sense of the resort watching me. This was before the fire, before the deaths, before the building became something else. Right now, the Desert Palms was just a hotel. Stone and steel and copper wire. Nothing more. I reached the electrical room at 12:17 a.m. The door was slightly ajar, light spilling out. Inside, I could hear someone moving around, the scrape of metal on metal, muttered curses. I peered through the crack. A man in maintenance coveralls stood before the main electrical panel, a toolbox open at his feet. He was maybe 40, balding, with the calloused hands of someone who'd worked manual labor his entire life. He was carefully stripping insulation from wires, creating exposed copper that would arc when the right conditions occurred. Sabotage that would look like an accident. In 13 minutes, those wires would spark. The fire would start in the elevator shaft, spreading through the ventilation system with lethal speed. I pushed the door open. "You need to stop." The man spun around, startled. His hand moved to his toolbox, and I saw the outline of a gun beneath the rag. "Who the hell are you?" "This area is restricted." "I know what you're doing," I said, keeping my hands visible. "I know you're sabotaging the wiring. I know the owner hired you because the resort's failing financially and the insurance payout is worth more than keeping it operational. And I know that in 3 hours, 27 people will be dead because of what you're doing right now." His expression shifted from surprise to calculation. "You're either a very good guesser or you're not from when you're supposed to be. The boss said there might be complications. Didn't think he meant time travel shit." The boss. Doesn't matter. He's paying me 50 grand to make this look like an accident. I've got a family, kids in college. This resort's going under anyway. Better to burn now with a payout than declare bankruptcy and leave everyone with nothing. He pulled the gun out casually. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to walk away, let me finish my work, and in about 10 minutes I'm going to clock out and drive home. By the time the fire starts, I'll be 20 miles away with an airtight alibi. And the people upstairs. Collateral damage. The boss assured me most of the building would evacuate in time. It's just a fire, not a bomb. People will get out." He checked his watch. "Besides, according to history, you already know how this plays out. The fire happens. People die. You can't change that. If you could, you would have. But that was the thing about time. It wasn't fixed. It was fluid, made solid by belief and consequence. I'd spent weeks being told the past was immutable, that the resort's existence was inevitable. But Patricia had offered me a different truth. Everything could change if someone was willing to pay the price. "I'm not leaving," I said. He sighed and raised the gun. "Then I'm really sorry about this." The shot never came. The maintenance man jerked suddenly, his eyes going wide. He looked down at his chest, where a dark stain was spreading across his coveralls. Behind him, a figure stepped out from the shadows between the electrical panels. Emmett, not the ghostly bellhop I'd come to know. This was Emmett in July 1992, before the fire, fully alive. He was holding a metal pipe, blood on one end. The maintenance man collapsed, the gun clattering across the concrete floor. "Jesus Christ," I whispered. Emmett looked at me with eyes that were completely alive and completely horrified. I didn't mean to hit him that hard. I just heard voices, came to check, saw the gun. He stared at his hands like they belonged to someone else. "Is he dead?" I knelt beside the maintenance man. checking for a pulse. Weak but present. No, but he needs medical attention. Now, I'll call security. Call an ambulance. Emmett started toward the door, then stopped, really looking at me for the first time. Wait, I don't recognize you. What department are you with? It's complicated. I looked at the exposed wires, the sabotage panel. If I fixed it, the fire wouldn't happen. The deaths would be prevented. The resort would never become the haunted pocket dimension I'd been trapped in. Patricia and all the others would get to live out their natural lives. But Emmett was here, alive, looking like a man who'd still have a life ahead of him. He blinked, shook his head, and for a sliver of a second his face was the face I'd seen in the cracked mirror of the hotel. Same jawline, same haunted tilt to his smile, but there was no ghost in him. Only a man who'd been wrenched awake at 3 in the morning by something he couldn't explain. If you fix that panel, I said, voice steady though my chest felt like it was made of loose bricks, the fire doesn't start. The guest's live. The resort keeps operating. The Desert Palms never dies and turns into what I know. He looked from me to the exposed copper and back. So we stop it. We just fix it. And it never happens. Who told you that? Patricia. The name left my mouth like a plea and a prayer. She told me history can be unmade. But there's a cost. Emmett's eyes narrowed. Cost? I thought of the pulsing watch in my pocket, warm and urgent. Of the way Patricia had told me the timeline wasn't a machine you repaired. It's a living thing that demands balance. You could pull a thread, she said, but something else would have to replace it. You could save the lives upstairs, but the universe would want to keep the sum of consequences equal. It was the only reason the resort had become what it was. People paid and people were lost, a trade carved into the bones of the place. We can stop him, Emmett said finally, as if settling on a plan for work that had to be done. But not here. We need to make it look like. He glanced at the toolbox, at the scattered insulation, at the gun. We need an excuse to get him to leave, to call security, and keep the panel from being touched again. I moved faster than my own thoughts. I radioed a quick report. Fake maintenance emergency in the boiler room. Anything that would route other staff through the corridor and away from the electrical room. Emmett called for help with a trembling voice that didn't entirely hide the calculation behind it. While he distracted, I went to the panel and knelt. The wires were clever, a tangle designed to fail at the worst possible second. Whoever wired them knew enough to mimic an accident. The insulation had been weakened, wires crossed in the perfect places. There were temporary clamps and spots that would hold for hours, but not for months. It should have been a simple fix. Reattach, isolate, tape, and secure. But every simple motion felt like rearranging the bones of fate. You okay? Emmett asked, voice close. He no longer seemed like a stranger. He seemed like a man who'd once kept a ledger of tiny rituals, who'd polished brass and smiled at guests in the lobby, while something in the foundations waited to be fed. I lied and began to work. My hands remembered 100 small things. How to strip, how to tape, where to set the clamps so the current would take the road we wanted. The watch in my pocket grew hotter. The second hand spun. Backward, forward, not settled. And I realized the timer was responding to me. It wasn't only measuring time. It was measuring decision. Halfway through, a sound from the corridor. Footsteps, the shadow voice, sent the maintenance man toward the door. Emmett stepped in front of him like a shield, voice low but fierce. The man stumbled, clutching his side where I'd seen the dark stain earlier. He looked terrified and furious and small. I can't. I'm out of options, he said. Do you know what $500 a month in rent looks like with 2 kids? You think the boss cares? He gave me the number and a check. It's easy logic. It isn't logic when people die, Emmett said, and there was a steadiness to him that felt like a promise. You walk out now. Change your life. Take the money. Go to the credit counselor. Call your wife. Don't do this. The man took a step back. Then, as if the universe itself had pressed on his chest, he dropped the gun. He couldn't finish. I finished for him. You leave. We won't press charges if you help us explain this as a dangerous job that nearly went wrong. It was a lie, but it was a lie that might buy lives. He left, shaking, phone in hand, voice breaking as he called his wife. Emmett stayed, watching until the corridor swallowed the man and the footsteps faded. I finished the wiring and sealed each splice with heat shrink and epoxy. My hands moved with a finality that felt sacred. The panel hummed with health. The watch in my pocket went cold. Relief, vast and immediate, washed through me, but it was thin as tissue. The thought of consequences nudged at the edges of my mind like a dog scratching at a locked door. Patricia's words returned, sharpened by the concrete reality of what I'd done. Everything could change, she'd said. Everything would change, but someone had to pay. The basement dimmed. Not literally. Light still washed the cinder block, but the air seemed to tilt as if a great weight had been shifted and the room was finding a new center of gravity. Emmett looked at his hands again, still appearing human and whole. "What now?" he asked, voice small. "Now we get you out of here," I said. "We make sure the story goes one way in every log and ledger. We make sure the boss believes the risk was the manic maintenance man and that the building is, for the moment, safe." He hesitated. Will they live? The people upstairs?" "Yes." I said it without thinking. The words were clean and true. "If we've done this right, everyone upstairs will go to bed and wake up tomorrow. There won't be a fire. There won't be the smoke. There won't be the screams." He exhaled sharply, something like laughter and sobbing folded together. "Then do it. Get out of this place while you can." I wanted to. God, I wanted to wake up where I belonged, with the handful of time that had been mine before I walked through that splintered doorway. But the watch was warm again, and every worm turned pulsing like a heart. I slipped my fingers into my pocket and felt the smooth, engraved back of it. The metal wasn't cold anymore. It resonated when I touched it, a low thrumming tone that braided into my bones. "You keep that," Emmett said suddenly. He reached out and took my hand. His touch was ordinary, calloused, real, and there was something in his eyes I hadn't seen before. Recognition not of me, but of debt. Some things don't get fixed without somebody paying. My sister, she works the front desk. My cousin is a chef. If we lose them, I'll never forgive myself. You did the right thing, whoever you are. "No," I said. "You don't understand." He smiled, soft and sad. "I think I do. Or maybe I don't, but it doesn't matter. You chose." There was a long beat where I imagined pulling the watch from my pocket and smashing it. I imagined smashing the thing that had given me the chance to change anything at all, and finding myself 2 days from now. Normal. Life resumed. No visions, no pocketed hauntings. But Patricia's warning would not be so easily escaped. You couldn't unmake a ledger entry. You could only write a new one that balanced the old. You could take it. I told Emmett, surprising myself. "Take the watch. Keep it. Live the life you were supposed to have. The timeline will try to settle around you, and maybe it will let you be. Maybe I'll forget you," he said. The words were scalpel. "Maybe everyone will. Maybe they'll forget me." I corrected, because that was the price I'd come to believe in. The cost of pulling a cord through the fabric of time was that someone would be trimmed away. Patricia had paid before I met her. Her face in my memories was a puzzle with missing pieces. People vanish when you change too much. Emmett's fingers tightened around mine. "Then let me forget you as a kindness. Let me go on not knowing the man who saved my life at 2 a.m. in a dank electrical room. Let it be a quiet ghost you carry." I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell him I deserved to be remembered, to keep even one person in the world who knew I had been brave. But the watch thrummed like a heartbeat against my palm, and truth is a stubborn, small thing. Sometimes saving people required erasure. It was the old bargains those places loved to make. "Okay," I said at last. Emmett nodded, as if settling an invoice. He let go of my hand. "Go. Get out of here. Live well. Tell the story sometimes, to strangers, If the urge hits you. I laughed, which sounded like breaking glass. I won't be able to tell it. He shrugged. Then live it. I walked to the doorway and climbed the stairs that led to the heart of the hotel. The watch in my pocket clicked one last time and then was still. I could feel something unspooling behind me, the tug of a thread being cut. The air smelled of dust and lemon cleaner and the thin ozone of newly repaired circuits. I had a sudden, ridiculous urge to take a pen and write my name on the inside of the electrical panel, as if leaving a signature could anchor me. I did not. The thought was childish and futile. Outside, the night was ordinary. The desert palms hummed with the tired life of a hotel that would make it through the morning. A valet argued softly with a guest. The neon sign out front buzzed. Somewhere, the faint clink of glasses and laughter floated up like a promise. I could see Emmett through the basement door, speaking with another man, probably his supervisor, points of light crossing his face. He turned as if to look for me, and then kept on talking. A normal man, alive in an ordinary world. I walked away without looking back. The next thing I remember is waking up on a bench by the bus depot, the sky the hard, clean blue of a desert morning. For a moment I tasted copper and the smell of scorched polyester, and then that too faded like a bad dream. I checked my pockets. The watch was gone. My pocket was empty, but for lint and a folded receipt for a coffee I didn't remember buying. There was no plaque. There was no letter. There was only the faintest ache behind my ribs, like an old bruise, and an impression that I had done something enormous, and that the world, in its quiet way, had accepted the cost. In the weeks that followed, I checked the paper. The Desert Palms ran listings for conferences and weekend getaways. It hosted weddings. The story about the fire that had once been an iron fact in my head no longer existed. Where once there had been headlines, there was now a series of advertisements for a summer special. I tried to tell myself I had done the right thing. I had saved people I'd never meet. I told myself the world was better for it. Sometimes, on nights when the sky pressed low and the city hummed, a face would flash into my mind. Emmett's face, laughing at something a bartender said, or Patricia on a bench, folding her hands in the precise way she'd done. The memories were like postcards whose edges had been chewed away. I could hold them only for a second before the ink bled. And somewhere, in a hotel that lived and breathed through decades, people slept without knowing they had been spared. I suppose that's what saving people looks like from where I stood. Quiet, anonymous, a ledger balanced by an invisible hand. I paid. The price was exact. I was lighter for it and lonelier. But when the occasional night came and the wind moved the trash in the alley like a small, polite applause, I allowed myself to believe one thing. That somewhere, a man named Emmett ate breakfast with his sister and told half-true stories about a night his life almost ended, never knowing the stranger in the basement who made sure he got the chance to tell them.